Scott Schwartz. Welcome to the Chad Silveus Show.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
Scott Schwartz, you're best known for your role as Flick in A Christmas Story, and also you starred in the hit movie from the 80s called The Toy. You starred alongside legendary actors and comedians Jackie Gleason and Richard Pryor. Now, I'm going to go straight for the jugular with my first question. Or actually, maybe I should say I'm going to go straight for the tongue. In that famous scene from A Christmas Story, where you get your tongue stuck on the flagpole, was your tongue actually stuck in the flagpole? Because it looks like it was.
No, it's a plastic pole. So it was more of a suction tube effect for the plastic pole. So no, it was not really stuck because that pole was plastic.
So it was just like a sticky pole? I don't understand exactly how did that scene work then. Could you give me a little more details about that?
They had a real pole. And over that, they overlaid a piece of plastic that they painted to make it look like it was old, metal, and rusty. They put a hole in it about the size of your pinky nail. And they put a tube on the inside. They ran it all the way down into the snow. And they had a little motor, like a little vacuum cleaner, but just kind of a small one. And it acted like a suction tube. That's it.
Wow. That's brilliant. I never would have thought of that. Of course, I'm not into like special effects. I don't know that type of stuff, but that's an awesome trick. Now, that scene in A Christmas Story, which is just such a classic scene, you actually, I just saw this recently, and maybe it's old news. Obviously, it's probably to you, but it wasn't to me. There's a statue of that, recreating that scene somewhere?
Yeah, it's in Hammond, Indiana, at the Hammond, Indiana Welcome Center. When you drive either north or south, but if you come down from Chicago and you get into Indiana, it's like the third exit, and it's the State Welcome Center, and they did a full life-size bronze statue of me in that pose.
Now, were you at a dedication for that or anything?
Yeah. No, I was a part of it from the beginning. They called me and said, hey, we're thinking of doing this. Would you be okay with it? And so that was that. And then they picked an artist to do it. And then I had to go see him. And he had literally like 1,200 pictures of every angle of my face possible. And then they put it together. And then, they said, okay, we're done. And we're going to do a dedication ceremony. Come on in. And we did it.
You know what's amazing about that is that I don't live in Indiana now, but I grew up and lived in Indiana for like 35 years in northern Indiana, not too far from Hammond, and I didn't know that, so I need to get out more.
It's the home of Gene Shepard, the writer.
Being in Indiana and growing up and knowing that, it took place in Indiana, the story, in northern Indiana, because I grew up a big Bears fan, and the family, at least the dad in the story, was a Bears fan. Like, I resonated with so much of the stuff they talked about, but then I heard that the movie was actually filmed in Cleveland. Is that right?
Yeah. The movie was shot in Cleveland, St. Catharines, Ontario, and then up in Toronto.
So part of it was filmed in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
I did not know that.
I mean, when you go percentage-wise, a lot of the film is shot in Canada. All the interiors are shot in Canada. A few of the exteriors were shot in Canada with the family. But, the Chinese restaurant is in Cleveland. The outside of the Ralphie house is Cleveland. The school was in Canada. So it was just where they found the locations that they thought were right. And of course, then it comes down to logistics and money and who gives them tax breaks and whatever.
Now, on that movie, you worked with quite a few other kids because you were a child at the time, obviously. Who did you enjoy working with the most, or who are you closest to from A Christmas Story?
Believe it or not, I'm actually closest to Zach Ward, who played Scott Farkas, the bully. Peter and I on the set spent most of the time together. He's busy. He's got his own things that he's doing. And he's had tremendous success. It just seems as though Zach and I kind of gravitated toward each other after we did the movie. We didn't say 25 words during shooting, and it was just afterwards we kind of just came together. And, as a matter of fact, he sent me a text this morning. I'm going to see him at lunch tomorrow.
So you're still close. That's awesome.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. We see each other every couple weeks.
He does such a good job of playing the bully, so he's nothing like that in real life then.
No. Zach's just one cool dude. He really is.
You are Jewish, and you are in one of the most famous Christmas movies of all time. Is that awkward at all?
It's not that it's awkward. It's just funny. I mean, and one of the other big films that I did, The Toy, with Richard Pryor and Jackie Gleason. It was it came out at Christmas time, December 10th, and then Christmas Story is Christmas Story, and I'm Jewish. It's hysterical. I mean, they don't really have big Hanukkah movies, you know what I mean? So it's like, it is what it is.
Just so many people around Christmas time just probably, are just all up on you, like just wanting to talk to you. I don't know. Like, does it bother you at all?
No, I'm pretty cool with all of it. I mean, I sort of, I don't really do a monstrous amount of social media. I have a Facebook page, which is more personal than it is, out there for fans and stuff like that. But plenty of people wish me Merry Christmas. And I'm like, really? My last name is Schwartz. Pretty much anybody that knows me knows I'm Jewish. Anybody that knows anything about me at all knows I'm Jewish. You know what? It's okay. It's fine. Anybody saying happy, whatever. I'd rather than say happy than say negative things. You know what I mean?
You were in some memorable movies and some memorable moments in movies that really stick in people's brains. So, there's probably, regardless, being in a Christmas movie, you're pretty much stuck with that. But you got a good attitude about it. Now, on the film, did you have any inclination, when obviously you were young, but even a few years after the film, did you have any inclination of how iconic that movie was going to become?
Of course not. Nobody can. You're not talking about a film with major movie stars. You're not talking about a film with superheroes. You're not talking about a film that's Star Wars or a big science fiction, whatever. This is a movie that MGM really didn't even want to make. They didn't want to make this film. This was a labor of love of Bob Clark's, and he loved the work of Gene Shepard. And Bob had done another wonderful family film called Porky's, and it made so much money that they wanted him to do Porky's too. And he said, absolutely. Right after I do my movie that I want to do, because it's my labor of love and I want to do A Christmas Story. And they argued and fought and fought and argued, and he had them. He had all the power, all the juice at that time to get this movie made. The movie was made. They didn't even want to put it in the movie theaters. And Bob went to Darren McGavin, and they had to go to MGM and argue for the film to get a theatrical release. And they put it out, a couple of weeks before the big Christmas movies were coming out that year, like 48 Hours. And I think it was Rambo 3 or something like that. Could have been Rambo 2. No, Rambo 3, whichever one it was. And, it kind of sat for years. It gained this cult following on VHS. You would see it once in a while on a cable channel or something. Turner hadn't bought it yet. And really, 96, when Ted Turner was buying the MGM library, when they bought A Christmas Story and they figured out to do the marathon. And that's really where the film takes off on a iconic type statue. It just took that long, which is, ultimately an extremely rare in Hollywood for a film, 14 or 15 years after its initial release to actually become like something. So none of us had a clue. It was just a job.
That gives me two thoughts in my head. First of all, I had no idea there was a connection between Porky's and A Christmas Story. You just enlightened me. My mind's kind of blown. The second thing I think about is when you're talking about a film like A Christmas Story, and all these years later, it becomes big. I'm not a Hollywood person. How does that affect financially the people who were in the film? Are you still making bank?
No, we never made bank, but there's particular reasons why. And none of it had to do with us being kids or anything like that. They never even showed A Christmas Story on ABC, NBC, CBS on a national network. It was always, whatever it was, USA, TBS, whatever it was always a cable channel, which affects your residuals. If you're shown nationally, you get paid a percentage of your salary or your weekly salary the first time, and it's a sliding scale. If it starts on cable, it starts way down the line and it goes down from there. You know, everybody goes, they show it 12 times, the marathon, you make so much money. And I go, no. I got to take everybody back to 1980, 81, somewhere right in between those 2 years. The entertainment industry, cable, they came up with this, I guess you could call it a scenario, whatever you want to call it, agreement, where if you show a movie on the same station more than one time in a calendar day, you only get paid for one showing. So in essence, it gets shown 12 times over Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, 12 times. We get paid for two showings. We make about $1.60.
Has it been lucrative in other ways for you?
Not as, I mean, you know, there's an old saying, you know, all of the movie studios are nonprofits. Don't know if you're aware of that. I don't care what they do or how much money they make. They don't make any money. And so like all of the merchandise, all of the DVDs, all of the millions of items they've sold, we've seen pennies. Pennies. You know, at the end of the day, if I get enough residuals and royalty to pay my electric bill, I'm about lucky. You know, where the only thing really where we do make any kind of, I want to say serious money, anything over, you know, $500 or whatever, is if we go out on appearances and we do, you know, speaking engagements or attend functions or things like that. You know, then we get paid a certain amount to show up, or if it's an autograph signing, people come up to us and they say, how you doing? I'm a big fan. I'd love a picture. And we charge them. We sign the autograph. Okay, fine. You know, that's about the only place we make any real money from it.
That being said, is there any likelihood, is there any chance to be an actual proper with a surviving cast member sequel to A Christmas Story?
No. I mean, Bob, they wanted Bob to do it originally, you know, the director, Bob Clark. I mean, he did do A Christmas Story 2, and he did do My Summer's Tale, which had Kieran Culkin in the Ralphie role, and None of Us. He didn't want to do a remake of A Christmas Story. You know, we had talked about a year before he passed about sort of doing an updated version of it where we were all the grown-ups. So now you've got Ralphie, Flick, Schwartz, Scott Farkas, Grover Dill, as, you know, 30-somethings, and it's their kids. You know, so it's sort of the story of what happened to all of them, their friendships, you know, or the bullies, what happened to them, you know, and then their kids and how they were grown up and, you know, are being brought up and what their situations were. But unfortunately, it just never got to be. You know, Bob left us, and that's pretty much where it is.
Right now, I'm going to do a segment of my show. It's called One Question with Violet. I have a beautiful 9-year-old little daughter who loves to ask all my guests one question. Is that all right with you?
Sure.
All right, give me just one moment to go grab her. I'm going to step out of the studio. I'll be right back. Okay, Scott, here she is. Here's One Question with Violet.
Was the snow on A Christmas Story real snow or fake snow?
Half and half. Good question. The scenes at the Ralphie's house, at Ralphie Parker's house, in the beginning, that was all fake snow. Cleveland had no snow that year. And so they had to basically manufacture what looked like snow. The stuff in the schoolyard, the stuff with the bullies, the Say Uncle, by the gym bars and all of that, that was real snow. The tongue on the flagpole, that was real snow. That was up in Canada.
This is, once again, this whole interview is very educational. I've loved this movie, you know, practically, you know, my entire life, growing up in the 80s and into the 90s when, you know, it was on every, you know, on the cable all the time. And now it's become like a part of, you know, American society, those of us who love Christmas. But literally, like, all these little things, like, I've always wondered about the flagpole, about the snow, and it's just crazy. And knowing that there's a connection to Porky still blows my mind. I never knew that. Now, I want to talk about the other really big movie that you're known for, The Toy. You worked with legendary comedian and actor Richard Pryor and legendary comedian and actor Jackie Gleason. You gotta tell me about that. What was it like working with those two guys?
What do they say in the MasterCard commercials? It was priceless. I mean, also on the set was the director, was Richard Donner, who had done The Omen and Superman, and he goes on to do all the Lethal Weapons and everything, and the Goonies he produced and all those things. Producer was Ray Stark, who did, A Star is Born with Streisand and had done Funny Girl, and he had done films for 45 years. It was an amazing set. You had Pryor and Gleason and Ned Beatty and Wilfred Hyde White and, a never-ending cast of incredible, talented people. An experience that today there's no way it could have been done. It could be done like that. You couldn't make that movie now. Too many undertones of upsetting people or, all the PC stuff that's out there. But at that time, for being, just about 14 and then 14 years old while we were shooting, I got an incredible education. I had an amazing experience. Pryor was the best. From the day I met him until the day he was gone, he was my friend, my muse, my confidant, my teacher. He was a lot of things to me. Mr. Gleason, I still call him that. I'm 51 years old and I still call him Mr. Gleason. He commanded respect. He deserved respect. We got along very well, all things considered, that he didn't like to work with kids and animals. I was told that. But I was a fan. So I wasn't the typical 12, 13, 14-year-old, just being goofy on the set and stuff like that. I was a fan of his. He knew that I loved his work. I was a Smokey and the Bandit fanatic. I loved The Honeymooners. I loved the Jackie Gleason Show. I loved The Hustler. So we would have discussions that a 14-year-old and he would never have. We talked about shooting pool and Paul Newman and being in burlesque in the 20s and 30s and 40s and doing all of the things that he did in vaudeville, being a big band leader and writing music. And, it's one of the things that, you say, well, what do you regret in your life? I regret that I never asked him more about the music, because he probably would have taught me how to read music, and I don't know how to read music, and he probably would have taught me.
When he died, that was how long after the toy was made? What year did he die?
He passes away in the middle of 87. It's 5 years later.
At that time, were you still in contact with him? Did you still see him after the film?
I saw him about a year before he passed was the last time I saw him.
Okay, what about Richard Pryor? Because you said that you guys were close up until he passed. Is that right?
Yeah, the last I was able to get over to his place was about two and a half months before he passed. I was traveling. I was doing, appearances and all that kind of stuff, as I do most all holiday seasons. As strange as things happen in life, he passed away on December 10th. December 10th is the same day the toy opened in the movie theaters. You got 365 days to have a shot at it. And our release date of the film is the same day as he passed. But, the last few years of his life, he had MS and he was, not in good shape. He was basically a vegetable. He was a prisoner in his own body, and it was really, really sad to see what happened to him, after knowing him and talking to him and seeing everything and the life that he had and the brains that he had, the intellectual history of his life just disappears because he can't communicate. And if you know anything about MS, it affects everything but the brain. It affects the muscles, the nerves, everything else. But the brain is still the brain. So he knows everything going on around him, but he can't communicate at all.
Yeah, it's awful that such a human being, because you knew him personally, and obviously you're speaking so highly of him, a human being of that caliber and a comedian of that caliber and an actor of that caliber, to lose them is awful. But when you're being tortured like that, it's a blessing to not have to be tormented anymore.
Yeah, I mean, the day that he passed, I mean, I was getting phone calls from many, many different people. And, it was, did you hear the news? Did this and that? And once I heard the first phone call, then, you turn on. I was actually in Michigan at a signing, turned on the TV, and there it was, okay. But people said to me, listen, you can't be sad. He's free. He's free of the medications and all of being bedridden and not being able to talk. And, his soul has basically been given its release from being human and, the life that we know. And he's at peace. Now he's up there and he's entertaining a new group of people that he used to know. And now he gets to see again.
I'm a huge fan of comedy, and I often will get into conversations with people about, who's the greatest comic of all time, who's the funniest man who's ever lived. And more often than not, some of the people that I consider connoisseurs of comedy will always say that Richard Pryor was the funniest comic they ever had seen.
I can't disagree with that. When they call you the Godfather, it's like Marlon Brando is considered one of the greatest American actors ever born, and they call him the Godfather. Yes, he was in the movie The Godfather, but they also called him the Godfather. And Richard, by just about every comedian in the past 40 years, said he was the one, and they're all different. They all have their own styles and their own things of what they do. George Carlin had one style of comedy, and it was great. Rodney Dangerfield had another. Richard Pryor had another. Red Fox had another. And there were some other ones, among the way, Lenny Bruce and whatever. Richard seemed to be the one that, with the mainstream, that they attached to him, and he was a very complex person. This was not a man of simplicity at all. He grows up in Illinois, in Peoria, in a whorehouse, and from there to being basically the biggest comedian star in Hollywood for several years. That's a long journey, and it puts a lot into one's brains of how they think of themselves. One of the best quotes I can give you of Richard, we were in his home one day, and this is the late 80s, and he's the friendliest. He was open and kind and wonderful. And I said, Richard, I got a question. You have no ego. I don't get it. I see you out. We go out. We see people. You have no ego. How is it possible? And he said to me, how much does ego pay? And I said, well, it doesn't pay anything. It's not a job. It's a mindset. He goes, no, I know what it is. He goes, but if it can't contribute to my life, help me take care of my home, my bills, my kids, why have it? It's a waste of time. Well,
there's wisdom there to go along with his brilliant humor.
Oh, and he had loads of it. And I got tons of it from him. I was lucky enough that he was the kind of person that I could call at any time with any question, and he would always, give me an answer and never say, hey, I don't have time for you. That was just never him. And I moved out to California from back east in the beginning of '87. And within a couple of months, I reconnected with him. And, I was by his side. And, it was to say at least once a week, if not twice a week, we were sitting down. Being an actor, you're not exactly, working 7 days a week. So he didn't have anything to do. I didn't have anything to do. I call him up. Hey, you want to have lunch? Yeah, come on over. Okay. Hey, you want to go here? Sure. Come on, let's go. He was just not the typical Hollywood person. He was so different than almost anybody I had ever met, really. Just to see the outpouring of information and kindness and love that he gave me, The only way I can repay him now, is to pass it on to others.
It's just such a blessing. Because when I was thinking about our interview, and I was thinking about, the roles that you played, and obviously you're thinking about the toy and working with Richard Pryor and Jackie Gleason. I wondered as a child, and obviously as you've grown up, I didn't know if you kept a relationship with those two. But I thought in the back of my mind, like, wonder what type of a situation it was, and what as a child you maybe gained from being around them. Well, you've done a very good job of describing it, and it's even more than I thought. And that's just what a blessing. What a blessing.
I was not the typical kid in show business. And I don't say that from any which way other than just how things go on in life. My father was a movie buff. I grew up in a house that loved movies. I went to movies every Saturday with my dad. And I had a knowledge of Hollywood before I got into show business. And it just happened by accident how I got in. Okay, fine, I get in. And you do a few commercials and you do a little thing. And then you do Broadway. And at the time I did the biggest non-musical flop in the history of Broadway. I did Frankenstein at the Palace Theater, the end of 80, beginning of 81, with two-time Academy Award winner Diane Wiest, John Glover, David Dukes, and John Carradine. He played the old blind man. Now, if you know about movies, John Carradine had kids. The Carradine boys, David Carradine from Kung Fu. The Long Riders with Keith Carradine and his brother, But I knew who John Carradine was at 12 years old, from the House of Frankenstein. So I had this enormous knowledge of film and entertainment before I got to Pryor and Gleason and Dick Donner, and then shooting another film called Kidco with Frank Yablans and David Niven Jr. and Charlie Hallahan was my dad in the film, and Ron Maxwell was the director, who went on to do Gettysburg, which is considered one of the greatest TV, accomplishments ever, miniseries. I was very lucky, and at the same time, it was sort of like everything that I did led up to what I was supposed to do.
As a child actor, are there any, like today as a man, as a grown man, because you hear all these things about, kids who get famous when they're young, Hollywood kind of chewing them up, spitting them out, messing them up. Were there any pitfalls? How do you rate your experience as having such fame, the fame that you've had as a childhood actor? How does that affect you today, good or bad?
It's not a question you can just easily answer. I had a great experience as a child actor. My brains were way ahead of my years. I step onto a set at 13 years old with Gleason and Pryor and Richard Donner and Ray Stark, and I was 17 or 18 already mentally. I was way ahead. I knew how to show up on time. I knew how to learn my lines. I knew what my marks were. I knew the things a lot of kids took for granted. I just knew what I was doing, and I learned, and I wanted to learn. So I went and talked to the boom operator and the sound guy and the camera guy and the lighting guys. And that's the guys I used to have my lunch with. I didn't eat lunch with, there was really no other kids on the set. There was one who was my stand-in, but I wanted to learn everything. I just was a sponge. I just wanted to learn. And so my experiences were good. I didn't have any wackos. I didn't, have anything that people, other things that have happened to others. When I do my stand-up, I make jokes about it, but I'm not going to make jokes about it on your show. I'm not a PC guy, so I'll just leave it at that. Richard Pryor was great. Gleason was great. Gave me knowledge and education. Nobody came at me in a bad way. Tried to harm me, trying to hurt me, anything like that. By the time I did the next film, Kidco, realistically, I was an adult mentally. I had stood my ground. I had held my own for 4 months with Gleason and Pryor on that set, and I was ready to go. So nobody was going to take advantage of me. Nobody was going to do anything stupid to me because I wouldn't have allowed it. How has it affected me today? You get recognized once in a while. You get a check in the mail once in a while. I can still go out and do public appearances and speaking engagements, whatever they hire me for. But it gave me a mindset of doing all of these things and not even thinking twice about it. There are people who can't stand in front of an audience, or in front of 10 people, and they just freeze or lock up. I performed in front of thousands of people, and it's just something I do. I have my own way of preparing for it, and then I just go and do what I got to do.
Today, with your experience with being as a childhood actor and having so much fame, and we fast forward to 2019, as an adult, you do stand-up. What other projects are you involved in? You do speaking engagements. Do you do any acting? And do you have any websites or anything you want to plug as well?
Yeah, I don't really have websites. I'm on Instagram. I don't use it all that much, but I am on it. I'm doing a film the end of the year, a thriller. The one I'm doing the end of the year is a thriller, and then I'm doing a comedy thriller in April. So I still act once in a while. I'm going to be in Lexington, Kentucky, in 2 weeks at the I think it's called the Kentucky Christmas Festival. It's in Lexington. You can, if you just Google my name in Lexington or the Kentucky Festival, I think it should come up. And then I will be the 6th, 7th, and 8th of December in King of Prussia at a sports and entertainment show. It's called The Philly Show, and you can just go to thephillyshow.com. Then I'm going to be in York, Pennsylvania at a mall doing an appearance. And then I'll be in Flemington, New Jersey on the 11th of December at RNC Collectibles in Flemington, New Jersey.
It's been such an honor to talk to you. I think that maybe actors sometimes don't realize the impact they have on people. You've been able to appreciate and see your work year after year. And still this day, the two movies that you are most famous for, A Christmas Story and The Toy, have both had major impacts on me. I remember when I was a kid on HBO, whenever The Toy would come on, I'd flip out. It's just such a memorable movie. And A Christmas Story, I don't have to explain that one. It's become iconic beyond belief around the holidays. But Scott Schwartz, thank you so much for coming on the Chad Silveus Show, and I hope to have you back real soon.
You're welcome, Chad. You got it. And if we don't talk, have a happy holiday season and a happy holidays to everybody. Tell Violet I said hi. Great question.